hello, this is Morel Bernard with the final episode, the final video of Lady Chatterley's Lover. So, the last words, I believe, were, then if you feel, after we have talked things over, that you still remain in the same mind, no doubt we can come to terms. Connie showed this letter to Mellors. He wants to begin his revenge on you, he said, handing the letter back. Connie was silent. She was somewhat surprised to find that she was afraid of Clifford. She was afraid to go near him. She was afraid of him as if he were evil and dangerous. What should I do? She said. Nothing, if you don't want to do anything, she replied, trying to put Clifford off. He answered, if you don't come back to Wragby now, I shall consider that you are coming back one day and act accordingly. I shall just go on the same and wait for you here if I wait for 50 years. She was frightened. This was bullying on an insidious sort. She had no doubt he meant what he said. He would not divorce her, and the child would be his, unless she could find some means of establishing its illegitimacy. After a time of worry and harassment, she decided to go to Wragby. Hilda would go with her. She wrote this to Clifford. He replied, I shall not welcome your sister, but I shall not deny her the door. I have no doubt she has connived at your desertion of your duties and responsibilities, so do not expect me to show pleasure in seeing her. They went to Wragby. Clifford was away when they arrived. Mrs. Bolton received them. Oh, your ladyship, it isn't the happy home coming we hope for, is it? She said. Isn't it? Said Connie. So this woman knew. How much did the rest of the servants know or suspect? She entered the house, which now she hated with every fibre in her body. The great, rambling mass of a place seemed evil to her, just a menace over her. She was no longer its mistress. She was its victim. I can't stay long here, she whispered to Hilda, terrified. And she suffered going into her own bedroom, re-entering into possession as if nothing had happened. She hated every minute inside the Wragby walls. They did not meet Clifford till they went down to dinner. He was dressed, and with a black tie, rather reserved and very much the superior gentleman. He behaved perfectly politely during the meal and kept a polite sort of conversation going. But it seemed all touched with insanity. How much do the servants know? Asked Connie, when the woman was out of the room. Of your intentions? Nothing whatsoever. Mrs. Bolton knows. He changed his colour. Mrs. Bolton is not exactly one of the servants, he said. Oh, I don't mind. There was tension till after coffee, when Hilda said she would go up to her room. Clifford and Connie sat in silence when she had gone. Neither would begin to speak. Connie was so glad that he wasn't taking the pathetic line. She kept him up to as much haughtiness as possible. She just sat silent and looked down at her hands. I suppose you don't at all mind having gone back on your word, he said at last. I can't help it, she murmured. But if you can't, who can? I suppose nobody. He looked at her with curious cold rage. He was used to her. She was, as it were, embedded in his will. How dare she now go back on him and destroy the fabric of his daily existence? How dared she try to cause this derangement of his personality? And for what Do you want to go back on everything? He insisted. Love, she said. It was best to be hackneyed. Love of Duncan Forbes. But you didn't think that worth having when you met me. Do you mean to say you now love him better than anything else in life? One changes, she said. Possibly you may have whims, but you still have to convince me of the importance of the change. I merely don't believe in your love of Duncan Forbes. But why should you believe in it? You've only to divorce me not to believe in my feelings. And why should I divorce you? Because I don't want to live here anymore, and you really don't want me. Pardon me? I don't change. For my part, since you are my wife, I should prefer that you should stay under my roof in dignity and quiet, leaving aside personal feelings, and I assure you, on my part, it is leaving aside a great deal. It is bitter as death to me to have this order of life broken up here in Wragby, and the decent round of daily life smashed just for some whim of yours. After a time of silence, she said, I can't help it. I've got to go. I expect I shall have a child. He too was silent for a time. And is it for the child's sake you must go? He asked at length. She nodded. And why? Is Duncan Forbes so keen on this spawn? Surely keener than you would be, she said. But really, I want my wife, and I see no reason for letting her go. If she likes to bear a child under my roof, she's welcome, and the child is welcome, provided that the decency and order of life is preserved. Do you mean to tell me that Duncan Forbes has a greater hold over you? I don't believe it. There was a pause. But don't you see, said Connie, I must go away from you, and I must live with the man I love. No, I don't see it. I don't give tuppence for your love, nor for the man you love. I don't believe in that sort of cant. But you see, I do. Do you, my dear madame? You are too intelligent. I assure you, to believe in your own love for Duncan Forbes, believe me, even now you really care more for me. So why should I give in to such nonsense? She felt he was right there, and she felt she could keep silent no longer. Because it isn't Duncan that I do love, she said, looking up at him. We only said it was Duncan to spare your feelings. Oh, to spare my feelings? Yes, because who I really love, and it'll make you hate me, is Mr. Mellors, who was our gamekeeper here. If he could have sprung out of his chair, he would have done so. His face went yellow, and his eyes bulged with disaster as he glared at her. Then he dropped back in his chair, gasping and looking up at the ceiling. At length he sat up. Do you mean to say you are telling me the truth? He asked, looking gruesome. Yes, you know I am. And when did you begin with him? In the spring. He was silent, like some beast in a trap. And it was you then in the bedroom at the cottage. So he had really inwardly known all the time. Yes, he still leaned forward in his chair, gazing at her like a cornered beast. My God, you ought to be wiped off the face of the earth. Why, she said faintly. But he seemed not to hear. That scum, that bunch of lout. that miserable cad, and carrying on with him all the time while you were here, and he was one of my servants. My God, is there any end to the beastly low nest of women?" He was beside himself with rage, as he knew, and she knew he would be. "And you mean to say you want to have a child to a cad like that?" "Yes, I'm going to." "You're going to? You mean you're sure? How long have you been sure?" "Since June." He was speechless, and the queer, blank look of a child came over him again. "You'd wonder," he said at last, "that such beings were ever allowed to be born." "What beings?" she asked. He looked at her weirdly without an answer. It was obvious he couldn't even accept the fact of the existence of Mellors in any connection with his own life. It was sheer, unspeakable, impotent hate. "And do you mean to say you'd marry him and bear his foul name?" he asked at length. "Yes, that's what I want." He was again as if dumbfounded. "Yes," he said at last, "that proves that what I've always thought about you is correct. You're not normal. You're not in your right senses. You're one of those half-insane, perverted women who must run after depravity." Suddenly, he had become almost wistfully moral, seeing himself the incarnation of good, and people like Mellors and Connie the incarnation of mud, of evil. He seemed to be growing vague inside a nimbus. "So don't you think you'd better divorce me and have done with it?" she said. "No, you can go where you like, but I shan't divorce you," he said, idiotically. "Why not?" He was silent, in the silence of imbecile obstinacy. "Would you even let the child be legally yours and your heir?" she said. "I care nothing about the child. But if it's a boy, it will be legally your son, and it will inherit your title and have Wragby." "I care nothing about that," he said. "But you must. I shall prevent the child from being legally yours if I can. I'll do so much rather it were illegitimate and mine, if it can't be Mellors." "Do as you like about that." He was immovable. "And won't you divorce me?" she said. "You can use Duncan as a pretext. There'd be no need to bring in the real name. Duncan doesn't mind." "I shall never divorce you," he said, as if a nail had been driven in. "But why?" "Because I want you to." "Because I follow my own inclination, and I'm not inclined to." It was useless. She went upstairs and told Hilda the upshot. "Better get away tomorrow," said Hilda, "and let him come to his senses." So Connie spent half the night packing her really private and personal effects. In the morning she had her trunks sent to the station without telling Clifford. She decided to see him only to say goodbye before lunch. But she spoke to Mrs. Bolton. "I must say goodbye to you, Mrs. Bolton. You know why. But I can trust you not to talk." "Oh, you can trust me, your ladyship, though it's a sad blow for us here, indeed, and I hope you'll be happy with the other gentleman." "The other gentleman, it's Mr. Mellors, and I care for him. Sir Clifford knows. But don't say anything to anybody. And if one day you think Sir Clifford may be willing to divorce me, let me know, will you? I should like to be properly married to the man I care for." "I'm sure you would, my lady. Oh, you can trust me. I'll be faithful to Sir Clifford, and I'll be faithful to you, for I can see you're both right in your own ways. Thank you. And look, I want to give you this, may I? So Connie left Wragby once more and went on with Hilda to Scotland. Mellors went into the country and got work on a farm. The idea was he should get his divorce, if possible, whether Connie got hers or not. And for 6 months he should work at farming so that eventually he and Connie could have some small farm of their own into which he could put his energy. For he would have to have some work, even hard work to do, and he would have to make his own living, even if the capital started him. So they would have to wait till spring was in, till the baby was born, till the early summer came round again. The Grange Farm, Old Hena, 29th September. A letter. I got on here with a bit of contriving because I knew Richards, the company engineer in the army. It is a farm belonging to Butler and Spitton Colliery Company. They use it for raising hay and oats for the pit ponies, not a private concern. But they've got cows and pigs and all the rest of it, and I get 30 shillings a week as labourer. Rowley, the farmer, puts me on to as many jobs as he can so that I can learn as much as possible between now and next Easter. I've not heard a thing about Bertha. I've no idea why she didn't show up at the divorce, nor where she is, nor what she's up to. But if I keep quiet till March, I suppose I shall be free. And don't you bother about Sir Clifford. He'll want to get rid of you one of these days. If he leaves you alone, it's a lot. I've got lodging in a bit of an old cottage in Engine Row, very decent. The man is engine driver at High Park, tall, with a beard and very chapel. The woman is a birdy bit of a thing who loves anything superior. King's English and allow me all the time. But they lost their only son in the war, and it sort of knocked a hole in them. There's a long, gawky lass of a daughter training for a school teacher, and I help her with her lessons sometimes, so we're quite the family. But they're very decent people, and only too kind to me. I expect I'm more coddled than you are. I like farming all right. It's not inspiring, but then I don't ask to be inspired. I'm used to horses and cows, though they are very female, have a soothing effect on me. When I sit with my head in her side, milking, I feel very Celeste. They have 6 rather fine Herefords. Oat harvest is just over, and I enjoyed it, in spite of sore hands and a lot of rain. I don't take much notice of people, but get on with them all right. Most things one just ignores. The pits are working badly. This is a colliery district like Teversholt, only prettier. I sometimes sit in the Wellington and talk to the men. They grumble a lot, but they're not going to alter anything. As everybody says, the Notts Derby miners have got their hearts in the right place. But the rest of their anatomy must be in the wrong place in a world that has no use for them. I like them, but they don't cheer me much. Not enough of the old fight cock in them. They talk about nationalisation of royalties, nationalisation of the whole industry. But you can't nationalise coal and leave all the other industries as they are. They talk about putting coal to new uses, like Sir Clifford is trying to do. It may work here and there, but not as a general thing. I doubt. Whatever you make, you've got to sell it. The men are very apathetic. They feel the whole darn thing is doomed, and I believe it is, and they are doomed along with it. Some of the young ones spout about the Soviet, but there's not much conviction in them. There's no sort of conviction about anything, except that it's all a muddle and a hole. Even under Soviet, you've still got to sell coal, and that's the difficulty. We've got this great industrial population and they've got to be fed, so the darn show is to be kept going somehow. The women talk a lot more than the men nowadays, and they are a slight more cocksure. The men are limp. They feel a doom somewhere, and they go about as if there was nothing to be done. Anyhow, nobody knows what should be done in spite of all the talk. The young ones get mad because they've no money to spend. Their whole life depends on spending money, and now they've got none to spend. That's our civilization and our education. Bring up the masses to depend entirely on spending money, and then the money gives out. The pits are working 2 days, 2.5 days a week, and there's no sign of betterment even for the winter. It means a man bringing up a family on 25 and 30 shillings. The women are the maddest of all, but then they're the maddest for spending nowadays. If you could only tell them that living and spending isn't the same thing, but it's no good. If only they were educated to live instead of earn and spend, they could manage very happily on 25 shillings. If the men wore scarlet trousers, as I said, they wouldn't think so much of money. If they could dance and hop and skip and sing and swagger and be handsome, they could do with very little cash and amuse the women themselves and be amused by the women. They ought to learn to be naked and handsome, and to sing in a mass and dance the old group dances, and carve the stools they sit on, and embroider their own emblems. Then they wouldn't need money. And that's the only way to solve the industrial problem. Train the people to be able to live and live in handsomeness without needing to spend. But you can't do it. They're all one-track minds nowadays. Whereas the mass of people ought even to try to think, because they can't. They should be alive and frisky and acknowledge the great God Pan. He's the only God for the masses forever. The few can go in for higher cults if they like, but let the mass be forever pagan. But the colliers aren't pagan, far from it. They're a sad lot, a deadened lot of men, dead to their women, dead to life. The young ones scoot about on motorbikes with girls and jazz when they get a chance. But they're very dead, and it needs money. Money poisons you when you've got it and starves you when you haven't. I'm sure you're sick of all of this, but I don't want to harp on myself, and I've nothing happening to me. I don't like to think too much about you in my head. That only makes a mess of us both. But of course, what I live for now is for you and me to live together. I'm frightened, really. I feel the devil in the air, and he'll try to get us. Or not the devil, Mammon, which I think, after all, is only the mass will of people wanting money and hating life. Anyhow, I feel great, grasping white hands in the air, wanting to get hold of the throat of anybody who tries to live beyond money and squeeze a life out. There's a bad time coming. There's a bad time coming, boys. There's a bad time coming. If things go on as they are, there's nothing lies in the future but death and destruction for these industrial masses. I feel my inside turn to water sometimes, and there you are, going to have a child by me. But never mind. All the bad times that ever have been haven't been able to blow the crocus out. Not even the love of women. So they won't be able to blow out my wanting you. nor the little glow there is between you and me. We'll be together next year. And though I'm frightened, I believe in your being with me. A man has to fend and fettle for the best, and then trust in something beyond himself. You can't insure against the future except by really believing in the best bit of you and in the power beyond it. So I believe in the little flame between us. For me now, it's the only thing in the world. I've got no friends, not inward friends, only you. And now the little flame is all I care about in my life. There's a baby, but that is a side issue. It's my Pentecost, the forked flame between me and you. The old Pentecost isn't quite right. Me and God is a bit uppish somehow. But the little forked flame between me and you, there you are. That's what I abide by, and will abide by. Cliffords and Berthas, colliery companies and governments and the money mass of people all notwithstanding. That's why I don't like to start thinking about you, actually. It only tortures me and does you no good. I don't want you to be away from me, but if I start fretting, it wastes something. Patience, always patience. This is my 40th winter, and I can't help all the winters that have been. But this winter, I'll stick to my little Pentecost flame and have some peace. And I won't let the breath of people blow it out. I believe in a higher mystery that doesn't let even the crocus be blown out. And if you're in Scotland and I'm in the Midlands and I can't put my arms around you and wrap my legs round you, yet I've got something of you. My soul softly naps in the little Pentecost flame with you, like the piece of fucking. We fucked a flame into being. Even the flowers are fucked into being between the sun and the earth. But it's a delicate thing, and takes patience and the long pause. So I love chastity now, because it is peace that comes of fucking. I love being chaste now. I love it as snowdrops love the snow. I love this chastity, which is the pause of peace of our fucking. Between us now like a snowdrop of forked white fire. And when the real spring comes, when the drawing together comes, then we can fuck the little flame brilliant and yellow, brilliant. But not now, not yet. Now is the time to be chaste. It is so good to be chaste, like a river of cool water in my soul. I love the chastity now that it flows between us. It is like fresh water and rain. How can men want wearisomely to philander? What a mystery to be like Don Juan and impotent ever to fuck oneself into peace. And the little flame alight, impotent and unable to be chaste in the cool between whiles as by a river. Well, so many words, because I can't touch you. If I could sleep with my arms round you, the ink could stay in the bottle. We could be chaste together just as we can fuck together. But we have to be separate for a while. And I suppose it is really the wiser way, if only one were sure. Never mind, never mind. We won't get worked up. We really trust in the little flame and in the unnamed God that shields it from being blown out. There's so much of you here with me, really, that it's a pity you aren't all here. Never mind about Sir Clifford. If you don't hear anything from him, never mind. He can't really do anything to you. Wait, he will want to get rid of you at last, to cast you out. But if he doesn't, we'll manage to keep clear of him. But he will. In the end, he will want to spew you out as the abominable thing. Now, I can't even leave off writing to you, but a great deal of us is together, and we can't but abide by it and steer our courses to meet soon. John Thomas says good night to Lady Jane, a little droopingly, but with a hopeful heart. You have been listening to Lady Chadley's Lover. Lady Chadley's Lovers ended with a very long letter from the gamekeeper to Lady Chadley. Then, this is the last episode of Lady Chadley's Lover. But do join me. Do join me, Morel Bernard, for more videos. Join me for the next video and the next video. And please subscribe and please share. Join me for the next video. Until then, Morel.